are Dutch and American F-16 pilots flying for Ukraine. I just saw a news flash that we need to talk about. The claim hit my timeline like a flare. A mixed squadron, Ukrainian F-16s, and a rotating cast of Ukrainian, American, and Dutch fighter pilots flying combat missions together over Kyiv. It's the kind of report that feels instantly plausible because it fits the shape of the war. Ukraine needs pilots, it needs hours, it needs competence at night against drones and cruise missiles, and they have a pilot shortage. So let's start with the incentives. If you're Ukraine, you're trying to do three hard things at the same time: keep Soviet jets flying, stand up a Western fighter fleet, and survive nightly campaigns of drones and missiles aimed at cities and infrastructure. Training pipelines aren't built for this. They're built for peacetime air forces that have the luxury of time, spare parts, and calm skies. Ukraine has none of that. An F-16 unit only becomes real when it can generate sorties on demand, on a night when Russia throws mixed packages of Shaheds and cruise missiles at power substations and your warning time is measured in minutes. That means pilots and maintenance crews, yes. It also means experience, intercept geometry, night work, sensor discipline, and the kind of calm that shows up only after you've done the job a few hundred times. That's why the rumor leans on these Western pilots performing air defense missions around Kyiv and the sniper targeting pod. Those details aren't random, they're the kind of believable inside baseball that makes a story sound grounded. They also align with what Ukraine has been doing with the F-16 so far: defensive missions, cruise missile interception, and operating inside of a threat environment that punishes anything careless. Now to the logic of foreign pilots. Ukraine's pilot shortage is just math. Training takes months, even for experienced aviators, and longer for anyone starting further back in the pipeline. Ukraine also can't strip its existing fighter force of pilots without creating a short-term collapse in coverage. Every MiG-29 or Su-27 pilot sent away for conversion training is a pilot not flying tomorrow. In wartime, tomorrow matters more than next year. Not to mention, the F-16 is not a forgiving aircraft. It's a knife's edge machine with no patience for mistakes. In a straight and level transit, you're living at 1G, sipping oxygen, watching the HUD do its calm little dance. Then the fight starts. You crank the jet into a turn, the flight control system bites, and you're suddenly hauling 7 to 9 Gs while your body tries to evict your eyesight. The F-16 can do that transition fast. Your physiology can't. That's the gap where pilots earn their money. This is why the Viper has a reputation. It's stable when you treat it right. It's brutally responsive when you ask for violence, and it punishes sloppy handling. High angle of attack, aggressive rolls, energy management, a ham-fisted pull on the stick, any of that can spiral into disorientation, G-lock risk, or a blown intercept that turns into a missile leak over a city. Add in night operations and weather and a target set that includes small drones and low-flying cruise missiles, and you've built an environment where good enough gets people killed. Now, this isn't to take anything away from Ukraine's amazing fighter pilots. They are legitimate badasses. I'm just saying, would Ukraine turn down the help if experienced Dutch and American F-16 veterans offered to fly alongside their Ukrainian counterparts? Probably not. G-tolerance isn't just grit, it's technique, it's conditioning, and it's repetition. Anti-G straining is a skill. Timing matters, breathing cadence matters, knowing when you're about to gray out matters. A pilot who's done decades of intercept work in an F-16 has thousands of micro decisions baked into muscle memory. How hard to pull without bleeding too much energy, how to keep the radar picture while your peripheral vision shrinks, how to stay inside the envelope without overcooking the jet. That's the uncomfortable reality that makes the contractor pilot idea more plausible than people want to admit. Now, Ukraine can train pilots quickly by wartime standards, yet quickly still means months, and months are expensive when Russia attacks every night. A small number of highly experienced F-16 pilots, especially ones already current on the jet and on the tactics, could do two things Ukraine desperately needs: keep sorties flowing without stripping the rest of the force, and compress the learning curve on the hardest parts: night intercepts and sensor management under stress. This is also where the nationality angle matters. Dutch F-16 pilots have lived in the NATO air defense ecosystem for decades. American F-16 pilots have lived inside it with even more combat rotations and large force exercise reps. If a mixed squadron existed, Those are exactly the two pools of experience you'd reach for, because the job is less learn to fly the airplane and more fly the airplane perfectly when your body is trying to shut down and your target is trying to disappear. None of this proves the reports are true. Ukraine has flat out denied the reports of Dutch and American F-16 veterans flying for Ukraine. My contacts in Kyiv, some of whom are retired US military officers, have reached out to me and confirmed this is true. So why would Ukraine not want this to go public? Obvious reasons. It could be hugely escalatory. Another reason why it might be true is it does explain why, if Ukraine wanted a short-term bridge, retired Western F-16 pilots are one of the few options that could plausibly deliver immediate combat value. A limited cadre of experienced outside pilots could, in theory, buy Ukraine time. It could keep the jets moving while Ukrainian crews build ours. It could also accelerate tactics transfer in a way that formal training can't. There's a difference between learning a system in a controlled syllabus and learning it with someone who's used it for years in messy, real-world operations. This is where the rumor becomes believable enough to take seriously as a possibility. It's also where the red light turns on. If American and Dutch pilots are flying combat missions inside Ukraine, even as contractors, it does create political risk for their home governments and a propaganda jackpot for Moscow. Russia has spent years trying to paint the war as a direct NATO assault, even though he was the asshole that invaded Ukraine. A verified story like this would be waved around like a bloody shirt, regardless of how limited the reality is. That doesn't mean it can't happen. It means that if it happens, it's the kind of thing you won't hear about in official language, which is why Ukraine is denying it. But you know what? I think the single thing that makes this the most plausible is Ukraine already fields foreign volunteers in combat roles on the ground. Since 2022, Ukraine's International Legion has included Americans, Britons, Canadians, Dutch, Georgians, and a long list of others. Some are former infantrymen because they want to go quench their grunty thirst. Some are former special operations personnel. Some are medics. A few are frankly adrenaline tourists. Many are serious professionals who made a conscious choice to fight. Some of them watched Red Dawn too much as a kid and now want to go over and shoot Russians. Whatever one thinks of that phenomenon, it exists. It's not hypothetical. Western veterans are already serving Ukrainian infantry and reconnaissance units, even though there are reports that the foreign legions are starting to be disbanded. That doesn't mean they're kicking out all of the Western military members. Some of them are operating artillery, they're training recruits, they're getting wounded, some have been killed. Legally and politically, this has been navigated as a matter of individual choice rather than formal state involvement. Governments have warned their citizens about the risks. They have not, in most cases, treated them as official combatants on behalf of NATO. In that light, the leap from Western infantry veterans fighting in Ukrainian units to retired Western fighter pilots flying under temporary contracts is less fantastical than what it first appears. But the key variable is status. Active duty NATO pilots flying combat missions in Ukraine would be a geopolitical nuke. Retired pilots operating under Ukrainian contracts in a deniable, limited capacity, that's a different beast. Still risky, still explosive if exposed, but not conceptually unprecedented. There's also a professional reality to consider. Fighter pilots do not lose their skills overnight. A retired F-16 pilot with recent operational experience still brings thousands of hours of systems knowledge, intercept tactics, and weapons employment judgment. Ukraine's current fight is heavily weighted toward air defense, cruise missile interception, and drone hunting. Those are mission sets that Western pilots have trained for extensively over the past 2 decades. Now, I'm not the first one to talk about this. Aviationist was the first to break this story, and they specifically reference night air defense sorties and the use of advanced targeting pods. Now, that detail is important. The F-16 is not just a jet with a radar and missiles. It's a sensor node. Mastering its targeting pod, understanding how to sort targets, and how to manage information in a high-tempo environment takes time. A small cadre of experienced pilots could act as combat enhancers, accelerating Ukrainian proficiency beyond what a compressed syllabus alone can achieve. There is precedent for this hybrid arrangement in other wars. Contractors have flown aircraft in support roles. Foreign advisors have embedded in units without wearing their country's home flag. The line between volunteer, contractor, and state actor can become blurry in prolonged conflicts where one side is fighting for survival and the other side is carefully calibrating its support. So where are we at? Well, even if this specific story is wrong, it sits on top of something that is true. Ukraine is compressing timelines that were never meant to be compressed. Russia's air campaign, especially its drone saturation tactics, forces Ukraine into constant adaptation. That adaptation can look like new interceptors, new electronic warfare tricks, new layered air defense concepts, and new ways to generate aircraft capacity faster than normal. And Russia has its own reason to fear stories like this, true or not. The Kremlin's preferred version of reality is one where Ukraine is running out of steam, where Western support is fickle, where the F-16 fleet becomes a symbol rather than a weapon. A functioning Ukrainian F-16 enterprise, sustained, trained, and getting sharper over time, breaks that story and signals durability. If the mixed squadron is real, it would be a wartime bridge. Risky, politically sensitive, and aimed at one thing, keeping jets in the air while Ukraine's own pilot base expands. If it's not real, it still tells you something about the war. This is what people expect to happen next because the demand signal is obvious. Ukraine needs capacity. Russia's betting on exhaustion. Every rumor like this is a symptom of a battlefield where time is the decisive resource. And if Western infantry veterans can already be found in Ukrainian trenches, the idea that a handful of retired Western fighter pilots might choose to strap into a Ukrainian F-16 for 6 months is not the wildest concept in this war. It would be dangerous. It would be controversial. It would also be entirely in character for a conflict that has repeatedly blurred the lines between national armies and global coalitions of volunteers. For now, we apply zero trust. We watch for confirmation. We read the silences as carefully as the statements. I'll update right here if and when we get confirmation. Until then, subscribe if you're feeling froggy. It really helps the channel grow and keeps me motivated to keep making global security content that's important to you. And subscribing is free. Come on. Hey, if that don't, forget about it. Bada bing. And as always, glory to Ukraine, glory to the heroes. Crimea is Ukraine.